Hello, everyone. I'm Valora Washington, CEO of the CAYL Institute, and it is my pleasure today and every first Thursday of every month to welcome you to this webinar series. It is really our intention to provide you with relevant and timely information about the early childhood education profession and about the children and families that we serve. All of our webinars are available free on our website at any time, and we hope that you have been enjoying them. We're excited because 2024 represents our 20th anniversary, and we're really excited and grateful for your support over the past 20 years. And this gives us a chance to thank the Shop Foundation, who was our original funder and who is also the funder of this CAYL Catalyst webinar series. And you too can join us as supporters. As to celebrate our 20th anniversary, we're inviting you to donate $20 to celebrate our 20 years. Any amount that you donate to us is tax deductible, and we really appreciate your gift. Throughout this year, we have been focusing in on the idea of Sankofa, which is really representing our individual and collective call to change. Sankofa means looking back, but moving forward. And it is an African symbol that means a lot to us. We look back and move forward because we know that systems change means that we have to keep the big picture in mind, not just the individual parts. And it requires us to move beyond surface level explanations and analysis to uncover recurring patterns and feedback loops and causal relationships in order to understand how our field can really be improved. Our field knows better than most that systems cannot be fixed just by focusing on individuals. Systems have to be designed and transformed from the ground up. We know this because our field has done so much to focus on individuals, mostly by asking them to get more credentials or to do something new. This may be very, very important for people to do this, but we do also have to understand that it is an inherent flaw to think that we can professionalize our field by focusing only on individuals. Instead, after many years, we have to realize that if we want more equitable change and we want a more efficient system, that we have to look at our values, our perspectives, financing, and other underlying structures and processes that perpetuate inequality, injustice, and inefficiency. As architects of system change, we have to know that it is our collective efforts and commitments that are required for systems change. We have to understand the significant role that we play, and we have to have the courage to delve deeply into the root causes of inequality, discrimination, marginalization, injustice, oppression. And in this way, we hope to have deep systemic change and a better future for our children and the people who care for them. After decades of working in this field, I can certainly assert that our field is full of great people, good people, committed people, kind people. But what we also know is that bad systems and bad policy can defeat the efforts of very good people unless we're systems thinkers who are working collectively. In this whole spirit of Sankofa, of looking back and moving forward, we're in a partnership with Exchange Magazine, where we're collecting and hoping to synthesize how you are working for change. So every month we ask you questions and hope to have your responses. This month, our questions are focused on systems change. And we want to ask you, how is the early childhood education field shaped by our local mindset, our national mindset, or world views? And what's working against systems thinking and systems change in our field? As we ask those questions, we're always thinking Sankofa. How do we look back and how do we move forward? And so this year, we focused a lot on the courage that it takes to really create systems change. We've been honoring the past and hoping to inspire the future. We've been asking you to reflect on the historical challenges of our field and at the same time to honor the trailblazers, innovators, and brave leaders who have stepped forward. So we've had Sherry Killen Stewart talking with us about equity. We've asked Adrienne Pedrosa to talk about how we can work better with families. Jessica Sager gave a powerful story about how she's advocated for family childcare over the years. Last month, we heard Barbara Cooper talk about the courage it takes for developmentally appropriate practice. And today, we're going to highlight systems change with Maurice Sykes. We're really excited by what these courageous leaders have had to say. And we invite you to delve into some of the CAYL publications to think about how ordinary educators like us can make a difference. Just a few words before we get started. We want you to know that after this webinar, you'll be receiving an email of resources that help you dig deeper into this issue of systems change. And for your convenience, this webinar is recorded and closed captioned. And we hope that you write in the chat and let us know what you're thinking about what our guests are saying. And at the end of the webinar, if you want to interact with our speakers, we will put a link in the chat that you can click so that it will take you to a way that you can interact with the speakers we have today. So let's get started. I'm really excited to hear from Maurice Sykes. And we have two next generation leaders who are going to talk about how they're picking up the mantle, and that will be Jamal Berry and Larissa Wilkinson. So let's start by hearing Maurice Sykes share with us his courageous journey of leadership for our field of early childhood education. Maurice, welcome. We really look forward to hearing from you today.
Well, thank you. I'm having trouble with my video. Here it goes.
Okay, great. We look forward to seeing you.
There
here. You are.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, hello, Valora, and thank you for inviting me
to pleasure.
Be a part of this series. You know, it occurred to me as I was preparing my talk that I've been knocking around the CAYL Institute for quite some time. As a matter of fact, if my memory serves me right, Ed Green and I co-facilitated the training of the first cohort of CAYL Fellows back in 2004 in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
You've been with us for 20 years.
There you go. So, and I'm going to send my $20 too. So
and
thank
you. Can make it 50 if you like.
So thank you for re-inviting me. You know, Valora, when you asked me to participate in this webinar under the title, a title sounding something like Profiles in Courage or Living Legends, I said to myself, why me? And then I thought, you know, you've been in this business for over 50 years. And if you ain't a profile in courage or a living legend now, you will never, never be. I say that in total humility. However, in my work, I have always promoted the children's agenda. My credo has been, who will speak for the children? They have no voice. They have no vote. They have no political capital. You know, we live in a time when the children's agenda, their hopes, dreams, and aspirations for the future are disparaged, disrespected, and disregarded. And if your life work has been about the business of doing the right thing for children, you are a profile in courage. You are a living legend. You are some kind of hero. The late American poet Maya Angelou said, courage is the most important of all virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can practice any virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage. In the end, there is no virtue without courage, end quote. However, in my opinion, courage is the willingness, it's the choice and willingness to confront painful decisions, dangers, or intimidations. However, moral courage The topic that I plan to talk to you about today is the ability to act rightly in the face of opposition, discouragement, shaming, scandal, and threatened loss of employment. I often say that you cannot complete the children's agenda as long as you work toward keeping a job. And I certainly commend this series because you have featured people who've taken a risk and put their job on the line. But as long as you are worried about employment, it's hard to do the children's agenda. Somewhere in the scripture, it reads, "For many are called, but few are chosen." However, a friend of mine who is a part of this webinar today, he says some are called to preach and some are called to teach. And I personally view the act of teaching young children or leading programs for young children as a sacred calling. That said, I now feel compelled to make a personal, professional, public confession. And it goes like this. All that I am and could hope to be, and all that I know and am able to do, I've learned in the magnificent, mystical, mercurial, magical company of children. In the company of children who make no little dreams, children who have high hopes and grand aspirations. In the company of children whose photos ain't on anyone's dresser and whose nightmares come in the daytime. In the company of children who have unrealized talents, potentials, and abilities. In the company of children whose name is today and not tomorrow. And it is to those children that I've dedicated my life work and to whose presence I honor in my talk with you today. So today, there are 3 questions that I will seek to explore regarding courage. 1, what is courage? 2, where does courage come from? And 3, how does one demonstrate courage? In my book, published by Red Leaf Press in 2015, entitled Doing the Right Thing for Children, 8 Qualities of Leadership, I devote the final chapter to a discussion on courage. At the beginning of the chapter, there is a quote by Winston Churchill that reads, quote, "Courage is what it takes to stand up, to speak, and courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." So let's get started. Please place in the chart your responses to the following question. What is courage? Go in the chat and answer, what is courage? What is courage? Great. The ability to do the difficult things, being, doing, and saying things. Courage, being bold, willingness to, ability to do something. Great, good responses. Great. So now the second question that I want to ask and put in the chat box, where does courage come from? Where do you think courage comes from? within the individual, from within. Faith, strength, knowledge, God, strong beliefs. Any more? Deep beliefs, knowing your personal values. Conviction. Lived experiences. Mindset and inner strength. Okay, let's go to the third question. How does one demonstrate courage? How does one demonstrate courage? All right. So here are my answers. You have given me such rich material to add to my answers. So I thank you for that. So what is courage? I had courage is mettle, resolution, fortitude, and perseverance. Where does courage come from? I had courage comes from within once you make the choice to live with compassion, integrity, self-worth, love, joy, and a deep sense of truth. How does one demonstrate courage? Facing difficulties head on, challenging the status quo, standing up for your beliefs, asking for help, and doing the right thing. So these are just wonderful examples that you put in the chat box. And I am conscious of the time, so I'm going to switch from a slide presentation that I was going to present on courage, and I'm going to go into a discussion on systems thinking, if that's all right with you. So in my second book, Child Care Justice, Transforming the System of Early Care for Young Children, published by Teachers College Press in 2023, I devoted the final chapter to a discussion of systems thinking. And for systems thinking for systems change. And as agents of change, that is our new frontier. So now I would like to share with you a PowerPoint that extrapolates the content of that chapter. Next slide. So systems thinking was made popular by a book by Peter Senge called The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of Learning Organizations. Next slide. What is systems thinking? Next. Seeking to understand system behavior by examining the whole instead of analyzing the parts. An unusual approach raises concerns. Systems thinking takes you down the road less traveled. Next. Systems thinking is a broad term used to represent a set of methods and tools that focus on the whole rather than parts, a context for defining and solving complex problems. Next. The ways of systems thinkers. Systems thinkers see the whole picture and not the parts. They change perspective to see new leverage points in complex systems. They look for interdependencies and they consider how their mental models create our future. Next. They consider how mental models create our future. They pay attention to and give voice to the long term. They go the wide way, use peripheral vision to see compelling cause and effect relationships. Next. They find where unanticipated consequences emerge. They focus on structure, not on blame. They hold the tension of paradox and controversy without trying to resolve it quickly. What's the problem? Next. Problems, messes, wicked messes. How do you deal with them? Problems are easy. Messes require systems thinking. Wicked messes require political action guided by systems thinking. Next. Here are the aspects of a structure, of a system. Next. So there are, it's also called the iceberg. So what we see at the tip, at the upper level of the iceberg, are incidents that require firefighting, crises, events, tasks. That is typically what we see as change agents. But there's all this stuff that's going on below the tip that we never look at, like patterns and behavior over time and hot button issues and emotions and anticipating and written rules and unwritten rules. All of these things are below the tip of the iceberg, and they are issues that we typically do not attend to. But a systems thinker looks at both what is at the tip and what's below the tip, beneath the surface. Next. Mental models, why the best ideas fail. Mental models, they are new insights fail to get put into practice because they conflict with images and beliefs about how the world works. Mental models are active and they shape how we act. Next. Mental models are beliefs, those things we hold to be true despite evidence to the contrary. Ideas and beliefs we use to guide our actions, explain cause and effect, and give meaning to our experience. Second order properties. Our mental models form a system within themselves. We need to understand our own mental models because we use them to make sense of other systems. They may cause us to mistake our view for reality, mistake the map for the ground it represents. Next. And this is called the ladder of inference. And this is what we do with our mental models. We take in data, we perceive data based on our experiences. We select from that data what we perceive to be important. We add meaning, cultural and personal, to that data. We make assumptions based on the meaning that we've added. We draw conclusions, we adopt beliefs about the world, and we take actions based on those beliefs. So that is the reflective loop. Next. How to have systemic mental models. Admit your mental models, have wide interests, be comfortable early childhood educators with ambiguity. Be curious about and pay particular attention to experiences that seem to contradict your mental models. Have a wide time horizon to look for feedback. When confronted with the problem, look at the assumptions you are making about the situation. Look for relationships, how events fit together. Look for loops and circles of cause and effect. The effect of one cause being the cause of another effect. And yes, these slides will be available. Next. Team learning. Sengay defines 3 dimensions of team learning: the ability to think insightfully about complex issues, the ability to take innovative coordinated action, and the ability to create a network that will allow other teams to take actions. Next. Sengay has developed a list for challenging assumptions for team learning. Today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. The harder you push, the harder the system pushes back, and behavior grows better before it grows worse. Next. The easy way out usually leads back in. The cure can be worse than the disease. Faster is slower. Cause and effect and not closely related in time and space. Small changes can produce big results, but the areas of highest leverage are often the least obvious. Next. So this is the core theory of success, and I write about it in the book. It starts with relationships. The quality of relationships influences the quality of thinking, which influences the quality of actions, which influences the quality of results. So results are tied into relationships. Next. Systems thinking is not easier, but it's easier than this. And now it is my pleasure to turn over the mic to one of the two up-and-coming architects of change, as Valora has coined the phrase, Jamal Berry, President and CEO of Educare DC. Take it away, Jamal.
Well, thank you, Maurice, for that. And I appreciate your slides that you just went over. Today, I want to talk to you about courageous leadership and system change from my perspective. And so I think courage and leadership is displayed in various ways. And so I want to give you an example of courage and leadership and my mindset behind it. And then I want to correlate that to systems change, which is just referring to the deliberate effort to transform the underlying structures, processes, and dynamics of a system in order to really address the root cause of social and environmental issues. So my first example, in 2018, I was asked by New America to write up on a blog. And when I was talking to New America at that time, I think DC had just extended the qualifications and credentialing for teachers. And, I was in a little bit of an ambivalent situation. The courage comes from, I think, a lot of my colleagues, and we would all agree that, we need credentials in early childhood. And I still totally agree with that. But the name of the article was Formal Credentials and Degrees Are Not Always the Best Starting Point for Early Childhood Educators. So in this blog, I discussed my pathway, which was formal. I went undergrad to a historical Black college and university where I majored in child and adolescent studies. I had a master's at the time in early childhood special education and then an EDS. And so, by my path, I agree that we need degrees in early childhood. And what I really was getting to was the starting point. So in that experience, I bring in two of the best teachers that I knew at that time and still know who did not have degrees. They had CDAs and they had some college credits. However, they were far from being finished. And in this blog, I went on to say that because of their willingness to engage in embedded professional development, including reflective supervision, coaching, and community practices, they were becoming two of the most effective teachers that I knew. I ended with this quote: in the process, we should remember that from a business standpoint, even if successful in raising credentials and teacher compensation, most early childhood programs struggle to keep afloat. Rather than forced trade-offs between credentials, compensation, and diversity, the ECE field should invest in quality early learning by establishing sustainable structures and funding sources for teachers and programs that can yield the greatest impact for children. I truly believe that by strategically appropriating funding, by training and working with others in the community to increase program quality through grant-funded trainings and partnerships extending beyond our program walls, all children would be the beneficiaries. Lo and behold, 2024, now we have pay equity. So I really think that, I had the courage to speak up early on about what teachers needed. How that then went into my career now is in 2022, I went to my predecessor and I said, hey, we should start a staffing company. And she kind of laughed and I said, okay, we don't need to start a staffing company, but we need to train teachers and bring them into the field. We need to change our mindset and create a framework that challenges the current status quo. The workforce was struggling. And so we created what is the Professional Development Institute. Through that institute, we are training. We've created 30 new jobs. We've lowered our cost and staffing, and we're building a pipeline of educators through high-end quality training to set them up for success. Once again, where children are benefiting from this. So instead of having to use staffing companies, we have created our own ecosystem where we build non-credential staff up through training by empowering them and through mentoring and coaching them so that we can help the field. And the goal of this, what will happen in the future, is that DC as a whole is going to be able to benefit from this. As we kind of, I've heard, it was a Jewish concept that you kind of fill your own cup so that others around you can benefit from it. And so that's the mindset there. The second example that I want to bring to you was that in 2018, and this must have just been a powerful year for me, I was offered the opportunity to do a training in Saudi Arabia. The Education Ministry of Saudi Arabia came and did a tour at Educare. NAUIC was working with them at the time. And so after that tour, I was asked to come train. Well, my predecessor in the beginning said no. And I went home, I reflected on it. And at the time we talked about this newspaper test, right? Like if that's in the Washington Post that they said early childhood leader goes, what would happen? And so I came back to her and I had the courage to come back to her and I just said, everything that I do benefits Educare DC. Every training that I go to, every opportunity that I speak at, and she listened and I had the opportunity to go. Well, when I think about who was there, Libby Doggett was there, who at the time was working in the Obama administration, if I'm not mistaken, President Obama administration. And she actually was just at Educare with Trust for Learning. Valora Washington was there, who is the host of this amazing event today. Dr. Wadamara from the University of Denver was there. She was a speaker at the Educare Learning event that we had in 2023. Rian Alvin was there, who is a great friend of mine and the founder of Bremore, and she was the CEO of NACI at the time. Marika Cox Mitchell was there, who works for Bainham and one of the biggest supporters of DC Mini-EC. And I realize now that one of the things that was huge for me was that I think as a courageous leader, you have to be in spaces that you don't think you deserve to be in. And I know now that I was supposed to be in that space, right? At that time, I was just a school director and you have these amazing giants in the field, but I was supposed to be there. And I think you have to be courageous to be in that space. Now, what happens after that? So the example, so that was the courage, and the systems thinking that came out of that is that in 2022, I was president of the DC Head Start Association. And at the time when we were doing DC Early edX, we had a gift for educators. And I told the funder that we were working with at the time, I said, you know what, men, we want whiskey and cigars. And it was a little bit of a joke, right? But at the same time, what I was saying is we need to do things specific for men. Well, what that came into is now the DC Mini-EC. And so Maurice Sykes, who is our senior advisor, and I am the convener of DC Mini-EC, where we are taking the time to recruit, retain, and advance 100 men of color in early childhood, which means we're out here mentoring men. We're trying to get middle schoolers into early childhood. We are working with each other in community of practices and collegial dialogue to think about what quality, high quality early childhood education looks like. And so that is thinking about how to change the system and bring in more quality workforce into early childhood. So I would just leave you with these kind of words of wisdom. When you think about leading through systems change, you want to think about a robust case for change. Why should we even change, right? When I thought about the Professional Development Institute, we had to change the mindset of the workforce. When I think about DC Mini-EC, we need to make a space for men that want to work with children, are good at working with children, to be able to be in this field. You want to create collaboration across systems. You want to be disruptive in your innovations. Both things are innovative. You want to create the right incentives. So thinking about business models, the Professional Development Institute not only is helping to build an ecosystem at Educare DC, but it also lowered our staffing costs. So when I'm talking to my board about it, I was able to show why we needed this. and you want to shift culture and mindset and behavior. So the things that you do when you think about systems change, you have to think about culture, you have to think about how you're going to train, you have to think about mindsets, and then you have to think about behaviors, and you want to shift all that. So I appreciate having the time to be able to speak with you all, and I'm going to pass it over to Larissa.
All right. Thank you, Jamal, for welcoming me into this important conversation. It has been a true pleasure to listen to both you and Maurice highlight so many critical points regarding systems change in early childhood education. Addressing this need to really rethink and reimagine early childhood systems is crucial because it impacts the quality and accessibility of education for young children, shapes their developmental outcomes, and can ensure more equitable opportunities for all families. As Maurice has already mentioned, this issue can be described in systems thinking parlance as a wicked problem due to its complexity involving multiple stakeholders, policies, and deep-rooted systemic inequities. I hope to be able to contribute my personal experiences and perspectives to this imperative discussion. It's a privilege and honor to be a part of this conversation alongside ECE luminaries like Maurice Sykes and Valora Washington. So hello to everyone. My name is Larissa Wilkinson, and I serve as the Deputy CEO of Pre-K for SA in San Antonio. Although my career in early childhood education began and developed in Washington, D.C., I returned to my hometown of San Antonio 7 years ago. The reason? San Antonio was making significant strides in early childhood education, both locally and nationally. I was presented with an incredible opportunity to reshape the future of San Antonio's workforce within a single generation through transformative changes in early childhood education. Since this time, I've noticed striking parallels between DC and San Antonio as pioneering ECE cities with an unwavering dedication to cultivating the highest quality early childhood education ecosystems. Both cities have a rich history of dedicated and devoted advocates whose work has truly paved the way for the outstanding programs and initiatives we have today. It is their exceptional leadership, mentorship, and guidance that has informed my own career and passion for the work. And I know it has also informed many more emerging ECE leaders. So I express my sincerest gratitude. Reflecting on my own ECE journey as an EC educator, administrator, and systems leader that has been shaped by ECE giants such as Libby Doggett, Maurice Sykes, and Dr. Sarah Beret, as well as thinking about the broader landscape of ECE systems, I recognize the need, as Jamal has pointed out, for organizations to actively mentor and support aspiring early childhood educators and leaders by providing them with a clear career pathways and leadership opportunities. And again, as Jamal mentioned, exposure to different types of leadership experiences. By intentionally nurturing emerging ECE leaders and educators, we not only fortify high-quality systems centered around developmentally appropriate practices and the unique developmental needs of young children and their families, but also can forge the way for the advancement of more pro-family and pro-child policies. However, this entails fostering pathways to roles such as elementary school principalships, policy and research positions, and other various leadership roles within organizations. Ways to intentionally create frameworks to give early educators different types of experiences in a variety of organizations, policy, community, school districts, research, and to compensate them commensurately for these opportunities is a continued thought on my mind. And as Jamal articulated, there are powerful ways of doing this. So as a little background on Pre-K for SA, unlike many local early education initiatives that start by expanding access, San Antonio chose to lead with a strong vision of quality first. In 2011, former San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro convened a task force of business and education leaders throughout the city to identify the most effective approach to improving community educational outcomes. After a year of study, the Brainpower Task Force recommended the development of a program focused on high-quality pre-kindergarten services for 4-year-old children. The task force based their deliberate decision on the research demonstrating the long-term benefits of improving overall community education outcomes by helping young children to learn and read on grade level, making them less likely to fall behind their classmates and more likely to graduate and attend college. Championed as a workforce development initiative, in August 2012, the community voted to dedicate a 1/8 of a cent sales tax to fund the Pre-K for SA initiative for their first 8-year referendum. In 2020, Pre-K for SA went up for another reauthorization and passed successfully with a 74% approval vote. We have continued to think through and adapt our program. We now serve, as of last year, 3- and 4-year-olds. As we move into future iterations of the program, we will also be opening up a handful of infant toddler classrooms as well. But currently, Pre-K for SA serves 2,000 children annually through 4 state-of-the-art facilities. We also operate a pre-K through 2nd grade elementary school in partnership with one of our local districts. We are truly a seeing is believing program, demonstrating what is possible in early childhood education when you lead with high quality support, such as a research-based curriculum, highly trained teachers, and well-compensated early educators, as well as a robust family engagement program. In our efforts to improve ECE quality across the early childhood ecosystem from birth through age 8, we also engage in strategic partnerships with district ECE programs, child development centers, and family providers through our grants and free high-quality professional learning opportunities that we provide. Being able to successfully pass this initiative hinged on having a strong community vision of early childhood that led with quality supports first. The brilliance of the task force was thinking comprehensively about the continuity of care for young children through birth all the way into 3rd grade, and providing funding and supports along that continuum. It was also in understanding the need for an ongoing evaluation of the program by independent evaluators. This evaluation plan has been adapted over time to service the needs of the program and the community. It also provides the community with access to information about the need for high-quality early learning experiences for children and families. The future of innovative ECE systems change will involve more strategic partnerships and creative systems alignment solutions. It will take championing the need for greater resources, funding, and quality standards for all settings within a diverse delivery model. Partnerships are definitely not always easy, and changing mindsets, dispositions, and practices is definitely hard. It takes a lot of humility to understand the unique challenges and barriers of each sector, out-of-the-box problem solving, and mostly coming to a consensus on a comprehensive quality vision of early learning across this continuum that we continue to struggle with as a field. But we can't stop the conversations, and we need to include more voices in that vision of quality, including family and our early educators. We need to keep showing up at the tables with partners we previously may not have considered before, and keep forging forward with developing a shared vision and putting the resources in place to actualize that vision. It also means getting leaders in the room that might not always talk with each other, like CDC directors, family providers, and elementary school principals, to discuss our collective responsibility towards strengthening the continuum of care and education. Early childhood education and care systems are deeply fragmented. And so how do we start thinking about alignment differently and forming more strategic partnerships in these historically siloed sectors to strengthen continuity of care for young children? Pre-K partnership, shared services alliances are some real solutions. And I continue to grapple with more ideas and other ways to partner and make change happen. During my career and in my current role, I've learned a lot and been thinking a lot about the critical role that political champions, such as governors, mayors, and other influential political figures play in shaping the trajectory of early childhood systems. They are pivotal to systems change. And as advocates have demonstrated in cities like DC and San Antonio, identifying, recruiting, educating, and fostering deep and ongoing relationships with political champions is crucial for securing funding and support for essential early childhood programs. Political champions leverage their influence and advocacy to prioritize early childhood education on legislative agendas, ensuring it receives the attention and resources it needs to thrive. As ECE advocates, we sometimes tend to shy away from the political arena, but this is how we get things done. We need to get political and get accountable for the results of these initiatives, as evidenced by the work done in San Antonio, DC, and other cities. As Jamal and Maurice have already stated, the future of ECE systems work is going to require bold, courageous, and disruptive leadership. It will require increased consensus around a strong, comprehensive vision of high-quality early education, the need for cross-sectoral coalition building and advocacy, identifying political and community champions, and an unwavering dedication to keeping the needs of young children and families at the center of our systems, no matter the cost. I am often drawn to the quote by the author and researcher Margaret Wheatley: change always involves a dark night when everything falls apart. Yet if this period of dissolution is used to create new meaning, then chaos ends and new order emerges. So what is the new order of ECE systems? I'll let this question linger as we move into the group discussion.
Thank you so very much, Larissa. I am so inspired by this series we've had of deep, courageous leaders like Maurice, and the next generation leaders truly inspire me. Larissa, Jamal, I feel that our field is in great hands because of people like you who are going to continue to move the field forward. But as we start, Maurice, could you reflect a little bit on your personal journey? You have certainly inspired many people. I've known you for decades. You have been a disruptor. You have also gotten things done, significant things that have impacted thousands of people in the field. And we think about the compensation legislation in DC, for an example. Can you just reflect a little bit on your story of personal courage and the role that you've played in the field, and where did all that come from? So just give us a little personal reflection here.
Well, I should tell you that I never wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a social worker. And my church thought I was going to be a preacher. So in education, I could be a preacher, a teacher, and a social worker. But I mean, in my first book, I write about my always being concerned about the underdog. And I was president of the junior NAACP in Schenectady, New York. So even at 12 years of age, the notion of advocacy for freedom and liberation was a part of my work. So we don't often talk about the precursors, but what you should know about the boldness of leadership is that pay equity comes in part as a result of Barbara Kamara, Maurice Sykes, Carrie Thornhill, Andrea Young. When the city gave money to the public schools, we went to the then superintendent, Dr. Janey, and said, the public schools are doing fine. We need to put money in community-based programs. And we started what is now known as PKEEP. But PKEEP precedes the legislation for universal pre-K. And what PKEEP did was we identified classrooms in the community. They had to have a teacher with a bachelor's degree, an assistant teacher with an AA degree, no more than 15 children, and they were compensated at the same rate as a teacher, a public school teacher, and they were given the per pupil expenditure that the public schools got. So that is the boldness of collective leadership, because sometimes when we talk about where we are now, that's pay equity, but all of that groundwork, like the work that Larissa and Jamal are doing, are the building blocks for public policy.
And what we will put in our follow-up email, a case study about DC, which really shows that this is work that occurred over decades. It was not an overnight success, although a lot of the publicity about pay equity came overnight. It's decades of relationship building within the city of Washington, DC, and decades of advocacy. that happened as
Yes,
well.
and continuity of leadership. Because
Absolutely.
Barbara Kamara and Karen Thornhill and I have been around since they said, let's have childcare. So it's, the continuity of leadership you cannot overlook.
And that's why we've been having this series highlighting courageous leaders like yourself, but also that continuity of leadership, handing that mantle to Larissa, to Jamal, to others so that they can continue to work. Jamal, you and Larissa talked a lot about sharing power and building coalitions and working together for change. What can we do? And we think systems change is going to require this higher level of collaboration among us. How do you look into the future and think about collaboration among the many, many, many early childhood organizations that exist now? Even with that in a city level, systems change is going to require working together in that collaboration. Can you speak to collaboration and sharing power a little bit, Jamal and Larissa?
Yeah, I can start first. So, one, I think it's about bringing the right people to the table. And I think with sharing the power, I think about families and children. I think about the people who don't typically have the power in decision making, and you give them that. So from Head Start performance standard, we have policy council, right? And so our policy council, I would tell our policy council, your job is to make sure Jamal can't do whatever he wants to do, right? I have to go through you. You have to be able to acknowledge, you get to look at budgets. We're building your leadership skills. I'm teaching you everything I know. You actually have the power in this. And I think to have appropriate collaborations, we have to bring those who may not always have a voice in the seat at the table and give them a seat at the table. So really thinking of it from an equity lens.
Great. And just to sort of build off of that, I sort of touched on this a little bit. I can't say enough about one of the reasons Pre-K for SA was so successful was because it really started with a community-wide vision and this idea of cross-sectoral partnerships, bringing in business leaders, bringing in philanthropy. Also, I think it is, to Jamal's point, bringing the right people to the table, but it's also about going out there, and our CEO is fond of saying, running towards the danger. So also the dissenters, community leaders of ECE who don't understand, making a point to go out there and educate on what early childhood really can do to change the trajectory of a city. And so we did that a lot. We had a lot of community leaders who didn't understand what the initiative is, and just sitting down and talking with them, they really turned the wheel on how they felt about it and became some really diehard supporters. So I think it's about bringing the right people to the table, but also going out there and educating those dissenters and running towards the fear.
Larissa, that's so important because, again, thinking about the DC example, many, many years ago, even decades ago, people were organizing at the ward level, the neighborhood level, to advocate for young children, doing that. And even now, as DC has faced some threats to the progress, it is really engaging practitioners and people in that struggle. If you want to join in a conversation with Larissa and Jamal and Maurice, we're going to put a link in the chat where you can, at 5 o'clock, join in a conversation to ask them a question or to clarify anything. Maurice, any thoughts on what Jamal and Larissa have said here?
Well, yes, several, but I would challenge us to consider, all of this, bringing the right people in the room, and we've done that. And those of us who have been around know that Head Start had Project Transition and Project Continuity, where we tried to move the good practices of Head Start into the public school arena. And we were pushed back. The Parent Policy Council were pushed back at the schoolhouse door. What I think we need to do is to position early childhood education as a part of the public good. No one questions K-12 education. Well, they question it, but they don't question it the way we have not positioned ourselves. We think we're wonderful and we send these brilliant children to the public schools, and the public schools messes them up and they're no longer brilliant. We need to make our alliance and position ourselves as at least birth to 8, and that it's all a part of the public good, because we're even in silo funding. And so the new thinking, the new systems thinking has to be, how do we position early childhood as a part of the public good?
Thank you so much. I really want to thank Jamal, Larissa, and Maurice for sharing your wisdom with us. I want to encourage everyone who has a question or wants to interact with them to join us in the link. Thank you so much. It's been very powerful. This is the end of this series where we have been doing profiles of courageous leaders along with next generation leaders. We are starting in July, going to turn our attention to how each and every one of us can show up with courage. Our July webinar is going to be July 11th because of the 4th of July holiday. And we're going to start this series on how we can all show up with courage. And so we're going to start with talking about how we show up with courage to fund our field. And we're going to have two state commissioners, Amy Kershaw from Massachusetts and Beth Bai from Connecticut, who are going to talk about how we can fund our field. And we hope you'll join us on July 11th. If you're in Massachusetts, again, we're always looking for more providers. You are probably aware that we have a major grant called the Good Jobs Challenge, where we are really building and growing our own practitioners for the field. And as always, I want to thank the amazing CAYL team. For 20 years, you've been making this happen. Thank you so much for learning with all of us at the CAYL Institute today, and hope to see you in the Q&A session. Click the link. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being with you as always. Good night.